From the world headquarters of Fox News, it's The Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
A new twist in the Republican race for the White House tonight as Senator and Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio speaks out against frontrunner Donald Trump. The two have stayed largely out of each other's way until now, as Rubio hits Trump on his foreign policy stumbles. Tonight with special report. Watch.
Is Donald Trump qualified to be president of the United States?
Well, as I said, I think that the most important thing a president will ever do is provide for the national security of our country. And I think up to now he hasn't really answered serious questions about national security. And until he does, there should be concerns, not just about him, but about any candidate that's not able to speak in detail, with clarity, and with seriousness about the national security threats that we face. The government doesn't run the economy. The economy is run by the private sector. The job of a president is to ensure we have policies that allow the private sector to grow and prosper. But national security, the government is in charge of that. And you better have a president that understands the threats we face and what we have to do about it. And if you can't articulate that as a candidate, you cannot be commander-in-chief.
Fox News senior political analyst Britt Hume joins us now. Is this the argument about why an outsider doesn't make the most sense, Britt?
Well, it depends on the outsider, Megyn. When Ronald Reagan, who, although he'd been governor of California, came to Washington to be president, he had been speaking and writing on national and international issues for years, and he brought a philosophy and a broad concept of foreign policy with some specificity and details to the task. And that is something we have yet to see, as Marco Rubio correctly points out about Donald Trump. Rubio's point is well taken, especially in this respect. He makes the point that foreign policy is the province of the government, not just the government, the federal government. And not just the federal government, but the executive branch of the federal government, and that falls principally, therefore, on the president. And I've always thought that the real job, the main job, the big job of any president was the conduct of foreign policy and national defense. And that is an area where Donald Trump, to date, to be fair, to date, has not said very much. He's talked about how he's going to build the strongest military, one so strong that no one would dare challenge us. And he's talked about his negotiating skills and how he'd put them to work as president and how he would negotiate and indeed even get along with Vladimir Putin and others. But so far, that's about all he's really given us. Now, he promises more, and perhaps in time he will produce more. But I really do think it's not unreasonable to say that he needs to.
He promises more on some subjects, but then he had this interesting exchange with Hugh Hewitt this week where Hewitt pressed him on what he would do if Pakistan, which has nukes, went rogue. And this is how Trump answered.
You have to have a certain, people can't know exactly what your intentions are. You want to have a certain amount of, you want to have a little bit of guesswork for the enemy. And I just don't want to be telling people, and this is, by the way, this has nothing to do with lack of knowledge, because I think I know as much about Pakistan as most other people. But I will tell you, I don't want to broadcast my intentions.
Is that fair?
Well, once campaigning can be defined, running for president can be defined as broadcasting your intentions. Now, that does not mean that if you have a military operation in mind or a particular strategy of attack or counterattack or defense that you would articulate that. But it does mean that when somebody talks about some possibility like Pakistan going rogue, which is certainly not outside the realm of possibility, you got to do better than to say, I don't want to tell you. I mean, I think that's probably not going to stand, and I suspect perhaps he knows that and will attempt to have better answers in the future. But over time, as this goes on, national security will become, I think, a more important part of the debate than it has been so far. And he'll be expected to have some more specific answers.
How big a role do you think that played in the softening we saw in Trump's poll numbers in that CNN poll? A lot of people are saying, look at these other polls. Those other polls have online components, and thus they are unreliable and are not cited by Fox News ever. Not just in this race. We don't cite those polls because you go online, you can vote it many times, and it's not the reliable. Anyway, how big a role do you think the foreign policy exchange that Trump had, in particular with Free Arena and Rubio, on Russia and Putin, had on the softening we saw in his numbers?
It's really impossible to say, and I'm a little concerned about that particular CNN poll. Anyway, it was a sample of, 404 voters, plus or minus 5-point margin of error.
Too big?
So before we can conclude that he's really taken a hit, it seems to me we may want to wait to see some more polls, and it's hard to know what everybody was thinking. But But there's going to be more said about this, and more answers will be expected. And I think that what the effect of the Rubio comment today would be to raise the issue in a way that will make sure that it comes up again and that he's presented with it again and again.
Well, in the meantime, Trump retweeted something calling him Marco Amnesty last night. So you can sort of already see where the line of argument is going to go.
It never fails, does it?
Great to see you, Britt.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.
It's kind of catchy. Also today, the ACLU is now pushing to have Kim Davis thrown back in jail, claiming the clerk is causing new problems for same-sex couples trying to get married. Our lawyers, Martha, are here tonight on the possibility that Davis could land behind bars again. By the way, she is with us tomorrow night. But next, we have breaking news on this decorated Green Beret who got in trouble for confronting an admitted child rapist who also happens to be an Afghan ally. Up next, why this fight has now gone all the way to the White House and the Green Beret is losing.
For the policies that sort of govern the relationship between U.S. Military personnel serving in Afghanistan and their Afghan counterparts, I'd refer you to the Department of Defense.